Hi, my name is James Andrella, and you're listening to the Back to Human podcast. On the show with me today, I have Andreas Saltas, aka or otherwise known as the Bodmechanic. And I met Andreas probably 6, 7 years now ago at a gym that I was working at, and I had a very brief interaction with him, but he's the one that introduced me to PRI or Postural Restoration Institute regarding like rib cage, breathing mechanics, the pelvis, the neck, just different breathing techniques. And I'm sure we'll get into that. So we're going to dive into the brain, how the brain works, how Andres was able to heal from a pretty much catastrophic injury. He'll go into further details with this. And he was also the one that introduced me to Dr. Marin. So just that one interaction with him, I saw such an improvement, and I was so kind of taken aback by what I was introduced to because it was very far from anything that I've done in the strength and conditioning realm at that time. That I was like, I need more of this. But meanwhile, he was up in New York. I asked him if he knew anyone like him because he is a freaking brain. He wears many badges, and he's the one that recommended me to Dr. Marin, which I understudied for a year.
Mm.
So I'm really excited for this one. I'm sure everyone is going to learn a lot about what the brain and the body can do. So without further ado, Andreas, body mechanic, welcome to the show, brother. Of
Thank you very much for having me, brother. And yeah, it's been a year since we've known each other, so thank you again for having me on this.
of course, man. So could you tell me a little bit about your accident? Because I know you've mentioned that several times on your stories and your posts. And what led you to pursuing physical therapy?
Uh, yeah, so I actually wanted to become a physical therapist even before the accident, but I was very unsure. I have a family member, an uncle of mine, who is a physical therapist, and just would watch him. How he was praised by people that he would help, his lifestyle. So I said, "Oh, I want to do something like this." And indeed, I wanted to do something that was in the realm of, exercise, science, and physiology. Training. I love working with bodies and performance, but also wanted something in the medical side, but not to the extent of becoming a medical doctor per se. I don't want to deal with the amount of years and the load and the depth the debt that I would have to go into. So I wanted something in between, and I said, "All right, looks like physical therapy is it." Um, so I did have an interest in going with it, but I wasn't like, it wasn't a burning desire for me until when I graduated from high school. I graduated in Brooklyn, New York. But then I went to visit my parents in Greece, and my father, he bought me a motorcycle, like my dream motorcycle. And 2 days into vacationing, I went out clubbing at night. I did not drink, um, but maneuvering this motorcycle was very hard for me because it's a Harley and all the weight is in front of you, and I had custom ape hangers, so it wasn't the steering wheel wasn't here, so it was quite high up. And living on an island, you have uphills, downhills, very steep roads, and there's a very very common road going from the city to my village where I live. That there were a lot of accidents that happened there, and it was a very sharp turn that I had to make, and I tried obviously to maneuver the motorcycle, but I lost control, and the weight of the motorcycle, uh, you know, s- basically led me to fall. And across from that road is a cliff, and it was about a 50 to 60 foot cliff. So I literally fell in that part of the cliff, and I got wedged between two big boulders. The motorcycle got wedged also, but that was above me. And that was probably the first time ever that I wore a helmet. And if I didn't, I probably would have been dead by now because I actually saved the helmet to this day, and I see a giant hole on the top right as well as the jaw side. So yeah, that was 3 o'clock at night, and we're talking pitch dark, and the only light I had was just the moonlight. And I remember, you know, nobody can see you, nobody can hear you, and I'm screaming out of the top of my lungs. And I developed most of my PTSD that I had to deal with was because of that. Was every time I would get bouts of my PTSD, all I could hear in my head was just the screams. Just being helpless and not being able to know that anybody can find me. So because of that, literally after about an hour worth of just crying out for help, I had no other choice but to literally climb myself back up. Right. And we're not talking about, a nice, easy mountain that you can just like tiptoe on it. We're talking about like this, like almost vertical. So I had to grab on the rocks and dry plants and thorns and just like blood gushing down my arms from like the thorns. Somehow, like if I had to point out the amount of human strength we had, I've never had that kind of strength before, right? At the time, I wasn't really thinking that I didn't feel my legs. I guess from the adrenaline, it felt like they were working, but I really didn't pay attention to it. Somehow I got up to the very top. And back in the day, I don't know if you remember this, but you remember those Nokia phones that we used to have? We used to play we
Yep.
used to play Snake and
Snake.
everything. Man, those phones, man, their batteries last,
Indestructible.
yeah, indestructible. Their batteries last for like 2 weeks, right? My phone over here lasts maybe a day. Like, holy shit. And I was able to call my mother, but one of the things that happened to me was I had about eight broken ribs, and they all eight kind of pierced my right lung, and I had a lung collapse, and I was unable to talk. So I was trying to like muffle out the words of "come find me." Luckily, it's only one road to take from the village down to the city, so it's not like, you have to take like a different exit or something. Somehow they found me, and they rushed me to on the island. At the time, we didn't even have a hospital. We just had like an emergency, like a urgent care. And the island where I'm from, we also get a lot of blackouts. So there was also a blackout. So there was no electricity. So that means like all the doctors there, that whatever equipment they had, like an X-ray, they couldn't do nothing. So the only thing they were able to do is put a catheter in me. And still, I was unaware of my legs or anything. And I had to wait the next day until a chopper would come in to come pick me up to take me to the nearest island where they had a hospital. So they took me to the hospital, and still in shock. I wasn't processing what was going on with my body or anything, hyperventilating. They had to intubate me from my side to be able to drain out all the dead blood from the lung collapse. Um, IVs everywhere, morphine, so they could be able to calm me down. And through an MRI, they came and told me that I had a spinal cord injury, and they would do like sensory testing down my legs, and I couldn't feel anything, and I couldn't move them, and I went into another shock because I'm like, I'm paralyzed, right? And they couldn't really confirm to me that I actually had a spinal cord injury, because a spinal cord injury means that like there's a cut to the spinal cord, right? But they couldn't confirm it because there was a lot of swelling within the spinal cord. And it was inoperable because you have the spinal cord, but there's a sheet, like a covering of the spinal cord called a dura. And if you open the dura, like if you cut it open, you'll basically bleed out to death, right?
Mm.
So it was inoperable. So they said that because of this, you're going to have to make some lifestyle changes. You're going to be confined in a wheelchair, assisted devices, to your family, like a whole laundry list of things. And my entire family had to adapt to help me out on this. So I was a, I was about 3 months just feeling nothing, right? I actually had 3 failed attempts of suicide. I tried and it failed. Then I remember specifically going through the process of rehab. It was about four physical therapists at the time that they would come to my room and would take me to try and, move my legs, whatever. And they would also help me, strengthen my upper body because I had to use also crutches and also to push the wheelchair. And funny enough, because of all that upper body work, I would get very sore around my wrists because of the body weight that I had to handle. And every time I would move my wrists or just like move around my thumbs or my index fingers, for some freaking reason, I started getting little sensations on the tips of my toes. Now, for a paralyzed person to just feel this is like winning the lottery, right? I was ridiculously excited. And the funny thing was that no doctor was able to explain to me why that happened, right? We're talking one of the top of the lines of neurosurgeons and doctors coming from England to come check me out. They're like, we don't know what's going on, but whatever it is, keep going. But they still had the doubt of don't get your hopes up. All right, but still though, I kept doing the same thing, like mobilizing stuff and strengthening every time I would, then I got a little bit more. I noticed some specific stuff. Every time I would move, let's say my left wrist, like mobilize it and stretch it out and everything, I started feeling more of my right ankle. Then every time I would do, let's say, elbow work, like biceps, triceps, things like that, I started getting sensations on my knee. Every time I would move a shoulder, I would feel a hip, right? Every time I would move a neck, I would feel my pelvis, right? I've not even the therapist could tell me what's going on. Nobody, because the research also was not even out yet back in the day. The literature actually of these little interconnections came out literally 8 years ago from today. And now, for me, that was a big wow effect because now it made me understand more. So because of that, I had to find a lot of ways on how to keep it going and keep like fixing this, right? That's when I also got introduced into, I've heard about PRI back then, right? Because PRI goes way back. And I did a lot of breath work over and over. And I could feel like more stimulus going down to my legs. So at the time, I said, you know what? The only way I can access information like this is go to school. So I remember going into school literally in crutches or a wheelchair. And 4 years later, I came out of there running. But we're talking now like the entire student body as well as professors would be on my ass and be like, let's work on this. We don't know what's going on, but let's just keep going. Still, though, the information that I learned in school was just insufficient, right? Because, in my opinion, if you take a physiology book, for example, there should be no chapters. Okay, chapter one, muscle skeletal system, chapter two, neuro system. It's one continuum, right? One system talks to another.
Mhm.
Uh, so then I went over and I went to England for a master's degree in sports medicine because I still wanted to do sports. But that's where I got introduced to PRI, as well as other courses that I've taken on what we call neuromechanics, on how to mobilize nerves and how to mobilize the spinal cord itself. So that was the start of my career from there. So because of that accident, I made it into my own rehab, but that also transferred into making into a career from there.
Mhm.
Yeah. So that's basically in summary. Yeah.
Jeez. I was under the impression that somehow someone else found you. I did not know that you were able to climb out yourself. That's insane.
Not at all. Not at all, man.
Well,
It's just power of the human strength, You can call it adrenaline, you can call it whatever. Whatever it was, man, I've never experienced strength like that before. I'm like, I wish I could deadlift like that, you know? But yeah, but yeah, it was a nightmare and a blessing at the same time.
I was
Yeah.
gonna say, I was gonna ask, like, how was your mindset throughout that? And you kind of answered it with three attempts at your life. And in hindsight, would you say that it's the strangest form of a gift or divine intervention?
Indeed, yes. I mean, for some people, they need something close to life threatening or hitting rock bottom to understand that not how important small things in life are, and how you can achieve certain things that you want to achieve in life, right? So that's why, you hear all these, motivational speakers and things like that. I'm like, all right, whatever. But unless something really bad happens to you, I think that's like the big change, of a complete shift in your entire life. So others, get motivated with like the most simplest things, right? Others don't. So I think the best form is sometimes you just got to hit rock bottom, you know, because that's the only way you can appreciate everything. You like, what else I was at a point where I'm like, what do I have to lose? Right. I got nothing. So, and actually one of the temps was, I remember nurses were transferring me from my medical table to the OR table. And they obviously stripped me naked and they had to crisscross my arms. And I don't want to get too graphic, but the moment I had my arms down, it literally felt like I was touching somebody else's private parts. That's when I really wanted to really end my life because I'm not going to have kids. I'm not going to be able to enjoy sexual experiences. Your manhood just goes down the drain. So that was a big shock for me. But then again, the more I kept on working at it, everything started functioning again. So yeah, it's one of those things, man. That's what you have to go through sometimes.
If there was one thing in particular, I'm sure like once you started to get the sensation that like your brain kind of just lit up, it's like, wow, there is some type of hope. But if there's one thing in particular, you did the breathing, you also noticed, which I really want to get into, the like I guess cross body effect or how
Yeah,
working on an upper body limb affected the lower body and that improved. Well,
yeah.
what do you think helped you the most throughout that recovery? Were you
Um,
praying?
I'm sorry.
Were you praying at all?
Praying, yes, at the time, yes. I mean, I'm not a religious person. I'm more of a spiritual, because I'm a skeptic with everything. So if I don't have like objective evidence of certain things, then I really can't believe it, to be honest. Which is a totally different topic. But it was honestly, man, I can't really tell because it was a combination of things that helped me. So yeah, the mindset, visualization of me gaining my sensation of me being able to walk again. I do visualization before I start playing a new song on my guitar, and it just makes it easier. I think it's hard to tell because everything that I did had its purpose. For example, breathing was more also to help me with certain aspects of my muscles, but also for me to be able to have the energy, right? Not getting the shortness of breath. But just like in PRI, where they focus a lot on exhalation based practice, it helps a lot with flexion, flexor muscles or flexor tone. But there were times that I needed a lot of inhalation based practice, which helps with extensor tone, which I needed that because I needed my erectors to be able to work, to be able to stand. So that's why with PRI, amazing, amazing curriculum, but insufficient still and a little too contextual. Because you're only going to get better only at the positions you're in, not the moment you stand and you're good. Things kind of change. Now your vestibular system is sensing different stuff. Your vision, your entire sensory input to your brain changes from being on your back to standing, right? Um, if I had to point out the most the one system that helped me probably the most was the vestibular system, actually. which is your equilibrium, for those who don't know what the vestibular system is, which is more than just balance. It's more than just, having vertigo. I didn't have vertigo, but I did have balance issues, right? So I had to really dive into the vestibular system as well as vision, because that's why it's called the visual vestibular system. What grew my interest with it is because of those broken ribs that I had, I developed a functional type of scoliosis. And through the extensive research that I've done, through as many articles as I can find, the number one, or the closest to being number one reason for idiopathic scoliosis is a bad visual vestibular system. And that's a lot of people that have a hard time understanding, right? So I'm like, okay, I know I got an S curve. Let me see what I can do with this whole vestibular thing, right? And I dove into that, learning how it functions, what reflexes are caused. And every time I would do specific work for that, my spine started straightening out a little bit more, a little bit more. It's not perfect even now to this day. Nobody has a perfect straight spine. That's like, that doesn't exist, right? So when everybody says, oh, I got scoliosis, name me one person on this planet that doesn't have it. Even PRI confirms it as well, right? But that made the biggest impact. And then stacking vestibular work with mobility work, with strength training together gave me the best benefit as just doing them alone. Because again, every system has to work together. So can I do coordination work, for example, while I'm doing vestibular work or vision training at the same time, right? That's a form of a load, kind of like when you're going to the gym. All right, I'm going to put another plate on there because increase the load. Load is not just, increase the weight. It's also increase the speed, increase, change a body part, change, let's say change direction. So even let's say bench pressing, instead of benching this way, try benching this way, and everybody's going to be like, oh my God, you're going to get hurt like that. Are you? You're just actually making your body a little bit more resilient that way if you just try something different, right? So yeah, in essence, the vestibular system was probably the most powerful one to utilize in for my rehab per se.
Yeah, that's what I see on your Instagram a lot is you'll pair exercises and you definitely think outside the box. That's honestly to say the least. Stuff that I would never even personally think of myself. I come from like the bodybuilding background, probably when I was 16, 17, 18 years old, and then in strength and conditioning. So I was focused more, as we were getting into before the show, like just biomechanics alone and not really tapping into the nervous system. But it seems as though you've kind of switched over to a more like holistic approach, and I would even say like a top-down approach. So, what
Yes.
can you tell us about the brain? Like, what is the entire nervous system composed of? Because you've mentioned vestibular, the visual system. What do we have here?
Um, for me, out of all these systems, the nervous system, respiratory, muscle skeletal, for me, the king of all systems is your nervous system, because that is the only system that makes everything else communicate with each other, even if it's fascia. Everybody likes to talk about fascia and anatomy trains. I got my opinion on fascia. It really doesn't do much, to be honest. Yes, it holds structures together and things like that, and they're very interconnected, and not as powerful, right? And I've taken courses on that, like FRC and things like that. Great, doesn't do enough. But specifically, when I say nervous system, I'm talking more about the central nervous system, which is your brain and your spinal cord, right? Even more specific, your brain. And even so, I can possibly also include what we call the second brain, which is your guts, right? So that's why I had to dive into the visceral system, but not in the essence of nutrition per se, but more of the functions of all the organs. And I'm going to be honest with you, I really am not that versed with nutrition per se, like microbiomes and things like that. I don't like to get into an area where I have a lot more other things for me to focus on before I dive into something like that. Which is why I work with a lot of functional medicine therapists. But for me, king of all systems is this little 3-pound little organ that's in between your ears that literally controls everything in your body, whether you like it or not. We are our brains, right? And the brain has tremendous like interconnections, like the amount of neurons within our brains, which is last estimate was 9.4 quadrillion neurons, which is more stars than the galaxy, than the Milky Way. Do you imagine the all little intricate interconnections the brain has? And we still don't understand a lot about the brain either, because we're just finding more and more research through functional MRIs of, for example, pain, right? About 10 years ago, we found a total of 9 to 10 brain areas that process pain. Now it's 18, right? Brain areas that process pain, right? For example, I remember I had a COVID patient that lost the sense of smell and taste, mostly smell, and she started having neck pain ever since then. Okay. And she's like, I still have loss of smell, specifically on my right nostril. I can smell something on my left, but not so much on my right. I'm like, okay. One of the brain areas that processes pain is the temporal lobe, right? And she also complained to me something about she had like a little bit of loss of memory. She could remember stuff. And I'm like, all right, what do I know about the temporal lobe? It's responsible for smell, right? Because smell goes to the temporal lobe. You also have the hippocampus in there, which is memory. It also processes sound, right? But contralateral. So my right temporal lobe receives sound information from the left ear. And it's also responsible for other functions such as vision, right? So I'm like, all right, I put this person on a recumbent bike to get some cardio in, to get some more blood into the brain. I would put lavender under her right nostril, even though she couldn't smell it. I would have her read so she can do some eye movements. And I would put sound on her left ear only. 10 minutes later, she's like, I can actually smell the lavender now. Awesome. So I'm like, all right, you see where I'm getting at now? If I can use all other functions of a specific lobe of a brain, maybe I can help some other function that's lost, right? I don't know if that is making sense so far, right? So it worked. Why not? And ever since then, she's like, I can smell everything now. That's freaking awesome. I can smell my husband's farts now. That's freaking awesome.
That's wild, man. I don't know how you came up with that. I don't know if you like just brainstorm about these things, these cases, but just from hearing that, I'm thinking, okay, smell can cause memory issues, can cause pain, even vision issues. So, what about if we have things in our environment like um, toxic shampoos, lotions, creams, whatever, like the phthalates? I don't know if you ever heard about that, the endocrine disruptors. So
Yeah.
if that's constantly in your environment, you're constantly spelling that, that could contribute to all of those issues in a sense, no?
Well, very much. I mean, we have uh, we have to better explain this. Let me just pop something, a little model over here. A little crappy little brain model. So we have our brain, right? Here's how neurology basically works. You have inputs, right? So inputs can be three: exteroception, interoception, and proprioception, which all personal trainers do, right? Proprioception is movement. So we have inputs that come from the periphery, from external environments, from interoception, from the inside, gut function, heart rate, things that we feel on the inside. even emotions, right? Inputs, your brain then processes that information, right? And when it processes that information, your brain now has to do two things. It has to determine whether these inputs are they threatening or not. That's a decision it has to make now. And it's also and its other job is the brain has two jobs. One is survival, right? The other one is movement, right? Survival. Okay, the incoming information that I get, is it safe enough for me to move around the world, right? If the inputs suck and your brain now processes that sucky information, it now gives you an output, right? So input, interpretation, output. Pain, for example, is an output, not an input, right? It's a response of the brain. So why is that? So if pain is an output, that means some type of input is not good enough. Your brain is like, I don't like this, right? Inputs can be now, figure your brain being like a bucket, right? Let's say this. I'm going to fill in there IBS, gut problems. I'm going to fill in there past vertigo, past surgeries. I hate my job. I live in New York. Me, used to. Uh, Relationship problems, financial problems. I mentioned past surgeries, past ankle sprain. Whatever negative stuff goes in there goes into the threat bucket, right? Eventually that bucket of threats go up and now spills out pain, stiffness, immobility, dizziness, nausea, depression. You see where I'm getting at now?
Mhm.
So when I take in a client, for example, a patient, for example, I got to know everything they had in their life. How do you sleep? Do you have any gut problems? Do you have vision problems? Do you wear glasses? How are things at home? Where do you live? Right? What's your work? Right? Number be amazed by this. The number one reason for lower back pain is job dissatisfaction. Right? Number one reason. And then you see people doing some type of career change and they're like, my back pain's gone. All right, that's awesome. So that's how the brain works. So anything you do in life, whether you like it or not, your brain is a decision maker. You want to move better, your brain has to like it. Whatever new style of training that you're doing, whatever you want to start doing something different, your brain is going to have to be the decision maker for this. You are practicing neurology every single day, whether you're doing it intentionally or not. It's just your job now to be like, can I use it intentionally? Right. For example, vision training. Everybody likes to say that, oh, the more I get older, the more I'm going to start losing vision. Is it really age related? Or maybe because you're not using them, right? You're not doing vision skills. So, for example, you go to an eye doctor and they're only doing one test, which is the Snellen chart. Stand 20 feet away, read me the chart. Let's see what your vision's like. Okay. So then they're like, okay, I can see the line. Good. You're 20/20. All right. 20/20 is not the best though. 20/20 is average, right? 20/20 is average. You want vision? Take Tiger Woods. The guy can see 20/13 or something like that. The guy has like hawk eyes, right? Yeah, he had like surgical procedures done, but he does a lot of vision training, right? Plus, uh, the Snellen chart that the doctor has you, that's only one skill that your eyes do, which is called visual acuity. Can I see clear? But your eyes do like another 27 different things. One of them you already know: convergence, divergence, saccades, um, what's it called? It also does torsion when we try and do like rotational work. The eyes actually rotate, smooth pursuits, near far. It does like a whole list of other things than just seeing clear 2020, right? So this is the stuff that people have a hard time understanding, especially movement professionals, even such as yourself, right? And remember when I said that you have three types of inputs: exteroception, whatever we see in our environment; interoception, what's going on within us. Even if that is something like what you just mentioned before, the whole like shampoo or water. Okay, do chemical things affect the nervous system? Absolutely, right? We just got to know what it is. So that becomes something exteroceptive, and then it becomes interoceptive. Oh, my guts hurt every time I drink this water, or something like that, right? So it takes a very, very thorough history of what this person is doing and has done to be able to kind of put the pieces of the puzzles together. And I mentioned exteroception, interoception, and then proprioception, which is movement, right? And if I had to pull like a hierarchy of the most powerful system, number one is vision, because they're literally projections of your brain, right? When you're a what's it called? When you're in your not even a baby, when you're in mother's womb and you're like a little piece of like a little baby like this, the first things you see are eyes, right? A brain develops and then you see little small dots, those are your eyes, right? So that's the first system that develops. And they're also the closest to the brain, right? Vision is number one because vision is 90% sensory, right? It's like a lot of information. Second in the hierarchy for me would be vestibular because it's also closest to the brain. One of the last ones for me, man, will be proprioception. Like you can do tons of mobility work as much as you like. It won't have the amount of power though as vision and vestibular. And last thing is if you ever heard of the homunculus model, I don't know if you ever seen that before.
Right. I have heard of it, but I don't remember what it is off top.
So if you type in the homunculus model, you're going to see like a little human figure that has a very big face, very big eyes and lips, whatever, big hands, but a very little small body, right? It looks weird. The homunculus model is a representation of what the brain is most powerful to, meaning the face, the eyes, the tongue. I do tongue exercises too. The lips, like anything that involves the head and the hands have a lot more brain real estate than the body, right? So for example, if I do like a lot of ankle mobility, okay, that's fine. But if I do something with my wrist or my hand, that's a lot more brain stimulus than if I do like spinal work. I don't know if that's making sense so far, right? So if you go by the laws of the homuncular representation, you'll probably you'll probably have a much more effect to a person's performance and pain levels, right? Which is what explains to me why my hands and wrists had a dramatic effect for my rehab, right? Hopefully that makes sense now, right? So yeah, that's how the brain works, and that's how fascinated I am with it.
My brain just exploded.
Thanks. I do that a lot.
Oh man. Okay, so pain is an output.
Yeah.
Pain is an output. How often would you say that it is actually like biological? Like you have some issue with the tissue, your fascia's wound up here, because I'm sure you've seen it with, I call it like the mill physical therapy, the insurance-based physical therapy, where you come in, they put you on a bike, they strap you up with some stim, put you on, put a bag of ice on your knee, whatever it is,
I love
talk to you a
those.
little bit, send you on your way. So,
I
how
used to
much would
work.
you say?
Yeah.
is
I used to work
biological.
places like that when I first started, and I'm still fascinated that it's still out there. Um, okay, you go to the one of those PT offices and typical Western type of physical therapy, old school physical therapy. What do they do? Put stimulation on you, put a hot pack on you, 15 minutes because now the PT is working with somebody else, so they're doing it as a time saver. They actually call it the setup, right? So let's set this person up. The aide comes in, puts electrodes on you, crank it up, put heat on top of it, sweat there now for 15 minutes until the PT comes in for maybe another 10 minutes. And then they send you to the personal trainer or the aide itself. Okay, let's do a little bit of arm bike and let's do or a bike, whatever it is. That's your training. Oh, maybe some rotator cuff stuff, whatever. Oh my God. Like, no, because we have receptors on our skin, on our fascia, on our muscles, joints. We got receptors that send information to the brain, right? If we have now receptors, specific receptors for just light touch, right? Other receptors for something that vibrates, different receptor for hot, different one for cold, different one for sharp, different one for pressure, different one for stretch. We have receptors for every possible sensation that you have in your body. We also have receptors that are called nociceptors. Nociceptors are the threat receptors. In old books, actually still current ones, they don't mention nociceptors, they mention pain receptors. That's bullshit. There's no such thing as pain receptors. There are nociceptors, or in layman's terms, threat receptors that once that they're activated, your brain, they send signals up to the brain saying there's something threatening going on, but he's got to be the decision maker saying, is this threat too threatening? And if it is, I'm going to give you pain or stiffness or whatever. But if it's not threatening enough, I won't pay attention to it. Right. For example, you and me, as we're talking, and everybody listening to this right now, we all have rotator cuff tears. We all have meniscus tears. We all got labrum tears. You go get an MRI for yourself and you got tears everywhere in your body. But your brain is not processing those tears at all. It doesn't give a shit. It will give a shit to something that's too threatening. You getting me so far?
Mm-hmm.
Let's say now somebody goes into one of those PT places and they're now giving you heat and stim. Heat and temperature and sharp sensation, which is stimulation, electric stimulation, which is a sharp sensation. You're stimulating those receptors. You have people saying every time I put heat and stim on me, I feel terrible. Others say I feel nothing. Others feel amazing with it, right? Because for those who felt terrible, that's the wrong receptor to stimulate. But you might find the same person saying, I hate hot packs, I hate stimulation, but every time I use a Theragun, I feel amazing, right? Huh. Okay, so they like vibration. I had a bodybuilder once that came to me for right-sided neck pain. And he goes, dude, I've tried everything under the sun. I've done deep tissue work, pressure. I've done chiropractic, which is also pressure. I've gotten, I put hot packs, cold packs. I've done like stretching. Nothing works. But weirdly enough, the only thing that works is every time I go and touch up a tattoo of mine, I feel amazing. And the tattoo can be all the way down to my ankle, right? I'm like, huh, okay, you like sharp stuff, right? So I put stim on him, right? Neck pain gone. So I give him like other drills to do, but I found the appropriate receptor stimulus that his brain was like, I like this. Everything else is threatening for me, right? So if you have a very good understanding of neurophysiology, you basically own every type of manual therapy there is out there. You go and do what we call, I don't know, fascial stretch release. Okay, fascial stretch is still a stretch. But does this person's stretch receptors need it? Do they feel better or do they get worse with it? If they go for deep tissue therapy, that's pressure, right? Do their brains like pressure? How many people have you known that they've gone like deep tissue massage and they're like, I feel terrible, right? So you see, I have to find the appropriate sensory input to determine whether some type of method that they're doing, dry needling, electric stim, deep tissue massage, Theraguns, everything, every tool that you're using today has some type of neurological ramification to it, right? All you have to do now is see how you feel after. One easy thing that you can do is, I don't know, if you do like range of motion testing on your neck, it's a little tight going this way, it's fine going this way. I don't know, see if you can touch your toes. And if you put something hot anywhere on your body, for example, or to the area that you have pain, for example, and you put heat on it and you get stiffer, no. If I put something that vibrates on there and you reassess, still nothing. If you put something, if you put a little pressure on it, right, like 3 seconds, that's how fast the nervous system responds. And I do some type of pressure on it, and your neck goes like this. Awesome. What can I do? Voodoo band, right? Compression wrapping, give them mobility drills to do there. There's your therapy rehab. Make sense so far?
Mhm.
So that's why I'm fascinated with this, because it helps me understand all the other methods that are out there, right? Cupping, for example, right? You've seen practitioners, they put cups on them, right? And they get all bruised up. I still don't understand why the hell they're doing that. But if I know that I have some type of injury here and I press it, I put stuff on it, like Theragun, whatever. But if I tend to lift the skin, which is still a stretch, right, of the skin, not the muscle, and I pull it a little bit away, and they tell me, hey, that feels a lot better. Good. Now I can put a cup there. You see that? So every tool out there gives me a window of, does their nervous system like it or not? That's basically it.
So would that be how you personally approach it with like an in-person session where you're literally testing out these different stimuluses to see what the body's response is immediately? Or is it like, oh, we'll try this one day and then tell
Oh
me how you
yeah.
respond
So
2 days from now?
I mean, I primarily, like 80% of my business is actually done online. So I do a lot of Zoom stuff because I really don't need to personally see you in person, because you can do this stuff on your own too. You just need guidance, right? If I have a woman and her husband's there, like, hey man, come help me out here. Let's just apply these things on her, right? Let's get something sharp, maybe get like an edge of a knife and see if you can like pinprick her to feel sharp. Get something hot, see if you can put something vibrating on it, whatever. Um, what I tend to do is I don't test out every sensation and then recheck, but I do a side to side test. So if I know somebody comes to me for tennis elbow, okay, tennis elbow is a inflammation, doesn't really need inflammation of your wrist extensors, right? Okay, what nerve makes wrist extensors work? That's the radial nerve. Radial nerve is a mixed nerve. It is a sensory nerve and also a motor. Sensory means if I rub the top of my forearm and my tricep, that's the radial nerve giving information to my brain saying, hey, I feel this. So now, if somebody has tennis elbow and I do light touch test, hey, do you feel that? Yeah. Do you feel that? Yeah. All right, tell me which side feels less or more sensitive. And I go here. Okay, I feel that. And like, I don't feel it that much as I do with my right. Okay. So I'm not saying the sensation is diminished, but it's just less. So the less I feel stuff, the more your brain has a blurred map of what's going on down there. Light touch. I put something vibrating on. Are they equal? I put something hot on there. So I do a lot of side to side comparisons. And if I see that, hey, you don't feel vibration out of all the other senses that I've done to you as equal, and I put something vibrating on there, and then I check your tennis elbow and you're like, it's actually better. It's still there, but but it's a lot better. Okay. Then I'm like, all right, what nerve is that? Radial nerve. So then I can lightly mobilize the nerve, flossing, tensioning, right? You ever heard of like nerve flossing before?
Yeah, yeah.
So I do that in combo with something vibrating on there, right? So you see, like, you use the nerve. So nothing that when it comes to pain, is never just a structural tissue problem. There's always nerves involved because pain is in your brain, right? And again, there's tons of research. One of them is actually back in 2016, I think. It was a systematic review. They gathered a lot of research articles, and they had a population of 3,100 people, ages from 20 all the way to 80. And they would take x-rays of their spine, right? And you see that the older the population was, you would see disc herniations and disc protrusions and spondylolisthesis and arthritis. So as you get older, you see like shit going on in your spine from x-rays, right? But the title said 3,100 asymptomatic people. So internally, or on a picture and an MRI, you can look destroyed but still be pain-free. You also, the opposite applies. You can have a beautiful looking spine and still be in a lot of pain, because pain and tissue structure damage are not the same. And that's something we have a really hard time understanding. And another fascinating book about this, Explain Pain Supercharged. Fascinating book. Explains how pain really works. Yeah.
So you mentioned twice now about MRIs and how literally everyone could have some type of structural issue, or at least it looks like it on the MRI. So what do you think the validity of going to get an MRI is? Is it just like a waste of time or
I mean, it's helpful just to possibly see what's going on in there, but not much, because one, an MRI is just a picture of you sitting still. It doesn't tell me what's going on when you're moving. Second is, all right, I'll find some type of herniation, but then surgeons would go and operate on this herniation and the pain's still there, right? So maybe the pain that you're feeling, let's say sciatica, for example, is probably entrapped somewhere else instead of the herniation, right? So again, MRIs are okay, but it's not the diagnostic tool. If you want to know, the diagnostic tool is gait, walking. Your gait can tell me a lot more than an MRI can, right? So an MRI, yes, useful for certain situations, but if you have shoulder pain and you're going to find a rotator cuff problem, I guarantee you've had a rotator cuff problem years before you even started feeling the pain, right? So it's not enough. For me, it's actually trash, to be honest. I don't care what an MRI says, right? If I can make your pain go away without even looking at the MRI, without even me doing anything to your shoulder, but if I do something on a sprained ankle that you've had years ago and you left it untreated, and I do something to that ankle and your shoulder pain changes, maybe there's something else going on with that shoulder that other past injuries were not fixed. Does that make sense?
yeah.
So that's why a person's history matters 10 times more about what they show me on an MRI. That's it.
Have you come across the book? It's called Surgery is the New Placebo.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever
They
heard of
do this.
Have you ever heard of placebo surgery?
Yeah.
There you go.
So,
Right. Meniscus. I've seen one for medial meniscus tears. It was about 60 people overall. Half of them went for surgery, arthroscopic. The other half went for placebo surgery. They only did the cuts, but they did not repair the meniscus. And I like this research article because it had a 2-year follow-up. That's how you know a research article is legit. Those who had placebo surgery, no pain at all. Those who actually had the surgery to fix the meniscus still had pain. Right. So you see, is like this is fascinating stuff because still we have medical doctors trying to push for surgery. Meanwhile, it's really not needed. Right. So the doctor's job is just to keep you alive. Doctors keep you alive. Therapists and personal trainers make you thrive. Right.
your
You go to
personal trainers.
right. You go to your doctor what, once, twice, 3, 4 times a year, but you go to your personal trainer 3 times a week. What do you think has the biggest impact on your health? Right. So that's why I love working with personal trainers, because they're the ones that are going to make their client better, better, better. The doctor only cares about 2 things: surgery or pharmaceuticals. That's it.
Yep.
Nothing else. Right. So they're very much necessary, obviously. Right. We need doctors, but they're not enough. Right. I don't think that there's like a hierarchy just because they wear the long ass white coat that they're gods of medicine. No, they're not. Personal trainers are probably more powerful than they are. Right. There should be a team understanding for this, in my opinion. No hierarchy in this specific subject. Yeah.
I remember you making a post about that specifically. If trainers are more important than your doctors. I had ACL surgery before seeing you. I don't know if that's actually what I was asking for your help with because I was going through some knee pain at the time, or if it was like a shoulder issue. I can't really recall,
Mhm.
but it's come up lately where I kind of regret even going into the knife and having that done. I'm curious what my leg would look like now had I not, but I know there's a bunch of scar tissue in there. Like it gets really, really stiff. And then something that I thought of is like, okay, you're under anesthesia while you're getting the surgery, so you can't necessarily feel anything, but the body is still there. The body's literally being cut open.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. You
and
go
you don't
trauma.
have a conscious way to deal with that trauma.
Yeah.
Do you not think that that sticks with you somehow? It's like repressed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But if we're going to get into the case of an ACL surgery, okay, I would highly recommend getting surgery if indeed is a full thickness tear, because you can have a very unstable knee, right? So I'm not going to be against that, right? But if you have like a grade 1, which we all have, right? It's not necessary. Dealing now with the trauma of from the surgery is a whole different aspect, right? But because you're under anesthesia, I wouldn't think that it's traumatic because of the surgery at the time. But what happens afterwards, knowing that you got surgery, that you have to deal with this now? What kind of appropriate rehab you have to go through? And unfortunately, the rehab that you're getting is still not enough, right? Okay, it's more than just let's strengthen your quad, let's increase range of motion. You've probably seen this on my Instagram when I work on scars, right? Scars, let's think about this. You have skin receptors. If I have a scar, you're killing nerve endings, mechanoreceptors. So your brain now has a very blurred map of what's going on in that knee. I often go to that scar and I'll either put something hot on it, put something cold on it, put something vibrating, or I start moving it around scar tissue, right? And if I'm like, I'm moving like it's an 8 compass direction, up, down, left, right. And if I'm like, hey, I feel something sticky there. Okay, if I keep it there and then I reassess your stiffness, let's say your squat, and let's say I didn't do anything. You squat and you're like, hey, I can go about 90 degrees down my squat. Okay. I put my finger on that scar and I find that, hey, it's a little sticky there and I keep it there. and you squat ass to grass instantly, okay, now I can put kinesio tape and keep it there, right? From a scar. No mobility, no nothing. It's because your brain's like, hey, that's less threatening now. Now I can feel something. Okay, put a piece of kinesio tape there. Now do some mobility work to break up the scar tissue, right? And then 4 days later, you can take it off and you're still able to squat ass the grass. And that's just from one scar. But what about another? What about another? You mentioned that you have a client that had plastic surgery. Okay, I'll literally grab every single scar in her body and see which one gives her the best benefit. Now, mind you, if we're talking about scars, I can pull that scar in a specific direction. It can be sticky, and you might notice you got worse. Like now I can't squat it even half the way down. Okay, then I go the exact opposite way. Okay, now I can squat ass the grass. So osteopaths are very big on scars, especially pulling away from what we call the barrier, the sticky point. But is it that one? What about if you go into the barrier? So I have to assess, reassess all the time, right? That's how I know which one's best for the client or the patient, right? So with your question about ACL or when it comes to the trauma, I'm not so concerned about what happened in the surgery since you're under anesthesia. I care more about the mental trauma that you have of the things that you have to do now from the surgery and on, right? Okay, it was traumatic in the OR. But if I do something rehab wise to that knee, even if it's the scar and you're squatting ass the grass, it's not just the range of motion that you improved, everything changes. I've noticed people that when I do that, yeah, they're able to squat further, but they're also like, hey, I kind of feel a little more, I also feel a little more relaxed. I also feel, I don't feel so tensed anymore because everything in the nervous system changes, including your mental state, right? Your vagus nerve, for example, is like, hey, I like that. Input, interpretation, output. Does that make sense so far? There.
Would you, what kind of mental training do you do with people? Do you kind of bring awareness to if they have any type of negative self-talk or if they're kind of just beating themselves up?
Negative self-talk, absolutely. But you know how you practice meditation a lot, right?
Mhm.
Meditation is something I love, absolutely. But I like the type of meditation where not the traditional type of not thinking of anything, for example. It's impossible, especially in Western society. You're always thinking of something, right? You're living in anxiety. Meditation for me is what I said in my latest post on pelvic floor, right? Which is something a new realm I've dove into. Let's say like the pelvic floor. If I focus on what we call the kegels and everything, squeezing, squeezing, and squeezing pelvic floor, but nobody focuses on actually the relaxation of muscles, right? When I tell you, hey man, relax your neck. You're like, yeah, I'm relaxed. And you can see already there. Relaxation is a skill, right? It's not just like something that just happens automatically. So focusing on a skill like just muscle relaxation, right? That's meditative for me. So I can help somebody's negative self-talk by telling them, hey, just focus 5 minutes on this muscle relaxation of the site that you hurt, right? They can't think of anything else, just relaxing that muscle, for example, right? Emotions live in many parts of the brain, but specifically, there's a brain area called the insula, the insular cortex. It receives all the sensory information, but is also responsible for emotions. The insular cortex, very, very much interconnected with breathing. That's why breathing helps a lot. Very interconnected with the pelvic floor. That's why I like to dive into that. Very interconnected with guts, i.e., vagus nerve. So I can use neurology to affect somebody's mental state. That's why breathing works. That's why pelvic floor stuff works. That's why gut stuff works. I don't know if that makes making sense, right?
Mhm.
So instead of telling, hey, think positive, bullshit. What if I use other things, other functions of the brain that, let's say, like the insular cortex? The insular cortex is responsible for many different things. Can I use those many different things to alter emotions instead of doing something emotional to get rid of another emotional state? You get what I'm saying now? Right?
Mhm.
That's what I love about this stuff. Right? And hopefully it makes sense.
Let's get into breathing then as much as we can. So, breathing has been interest of mine probably over like the past 2 weeks. I've been diving back into my PRI stuff. I've also come across a technique a long time ago. They had maximal expansive breathing in FRC. You mentioned that. That's something that I've taken as well.
Yep.
And one technique in particular, I know you know so much about breath work. You know Buteco,
Yep.
but I came across something called a power breath, and this is from like an isometric strength training book, probably like 20, 30-year-old book, and it's very, very simple. It's like a maximum inhale, maximum exhale. You're bracing your abs as hard as possible.
Yep.
And I've been really, really consistent with it the past probably 2 weeks or so, and I've noticed like vast improvements. Just confidence wise, even more confidence than before. Um, I feel like my posture is better, and this is literally just laying on the ground. This is no PRI techniques because I know those can be quite difficult.
Yeah.
So you talk about breathing. You talked about how breathing helped with your recovery.
Mhm.
Let's dive into that a bit. What's the diaphragm do? How is it supposed to work? Is there a specific breathing technique that you'd recommend?
No, no, not a specific breathing technique. They're all fascinating, but they all serve a purpose, right? Um, Buteyko method, Wim Hof, uh, blocked breathing or reduced breathing. Reduced breathing is, let's say you have your finger on your nose and you can feel the warm coming out as you exhale. You can feel the cold as you inhale. See if you can not feel that, right? So you have to like breathe so little. Um, every type of breathing technique serves its purpose. The diaphragm is a different thing. Uh, if we're talking about breathing in neurology, right? That's why I said about PRI. PRI is a lot of exhalation based practice, right?
Yeah.
Exhalation based practice, for example, stimulates certain parts of your brainstem. So you have your brainstem, and it's three parts. Top one is called the midbrain. The second one is called the pons, and the last one, the tail of it, is called the medulla. Research shows that exhalation based practice stimulates more of the midbrain, the top, and the medulla. But specifically now, Buteyko method, for example, or even Wim Hof, which is a lot of accumulation of carbon dioxide, right? Which we need a lot of that, actually more than oxygen, is more of a midbrain stimulus, right? The midbrain now has two what we call cranial nerves, the 12 cranial nerves. So there's two cranial nerves in there, cranial nerve 3 and 4. Those two cranial nerves is eye function, right? You want to talk about convergence, right? If I do Buteyko or air hunger, if you ever heard of that before, blow out all your air, hold it, start squatting, right? As many reps you can without breathing. And then once you stop and you then just restore normal breathing, you stimulated your brain, your midbrain, And if you take somebody's convergence to see closer, they can actually converge more, right? But here's the thing though. The midbrain is the start of your sympathetic nervous system. So it's very sympathetically driven, which is something I would not do before bed, for example, or somebody that has a lot of anxiety, right? Or somebody that has, I wouldn't say pain, but that somebody that has like a very high sympathetic nervous system. Are we good on that? But if I do, yes.
I was under the impression that your exhale was linked more towards your parasympathetic nervous system.
Yes, yes, but calm exhalation.
Okay.
Long exhalation, like let's say 6 seconds exhalation with a 3 second inhalation. Calm exhalation, now that's more medulla. The medulla, now you got vagus nerve, you got glossopharyngeal nerve, you got hypoglossal, tongue, and you got the accessory nerve, which is traps and SCM. So when I give people calm exhalation based practice, their neck is like, hey, that actually feels looser now, right? Their vagus nerve stimulates, right? Vagus nerve goes to the insular cortex too. Hey, my guts feel better, right? So yes, you're right, but what type? If it's
Mhm.
like forceful exhalation, midbrain. Calm though, medulla. Now, inhalation based practice, breathing air in more than you exhale, and especially if it's calm, not like you're sniffing Coke or something, but calm inhalation that you can feel the rib cage expand, that's now PONS. PONS now. Oh, before I get into that, when you stimulate through exhalation based practice, either midbrain or medulla, those areas also facilitate more flexor tone, which means my shoulder hurts when I go into flexion. I can't touch my toes. I can't bend my head down. Anything that involves flexion, when you do exhalation based practice, you might notice, yo, I can bring my head down. I can touch my toes better, right? Inhalation based practice now, which I use a lot in my therapy, you're stimulating now the pons. The pons facilitates extensor tone, lumbar rectors, glutes, hamstrings, calves. No, sorry, dorsiflexors, elbows, triceps, anything that involves extension. If I do an inhalation based practice, I can extend better. Hence why we also do the Valsalva. Valsalva is there and they can deadlift more, right? They're inhaling because they're increasing their extensor tone. But forceful Valsalva, not the best. But if it's calm inhalation, it's more pons. You get better extension, right? And that now, the pons also has parasympathetic properties. So that's why, with a lot of the practices of breathing, focusing on exhalation, what about inhalation? You can actually stimulate your parasympathetic nervous system even through inhalation as well, right? And last, the pons has another four cranial nerves. One of them is trigeminal, jaw muscles, facial sensation. So I have people with migraines or TMJ do inhalation based practice. And they're like, hey, that doesn't feel as bad anymore. Another nerve is the vestibulocochlear nerve, vestibular system, balance, right? I can affect somebody's balance by doing inhalation based practice. Another one is the abducens nerve that makes the eyes abduct, which means seeing far away, right? Something that we tend to use very little because of constant use of phones and monitors, right? And then the other one is the facial nerve, muscles of facial expression, right? So when I have people that come to me that had Botox, They're like, my neck hurts every time I go back. No wonder, because you just paralyzed now facial muscles. The facial nerve lives in the pons. The pons is also responsible for extensor tone. No wonder you can't extend. See that? Right?
Yeah.
I have people trying to do, let's say, a back bend because they're hurting, and I would raise their eyebrows and have them pull it down isometrically. They're like, yo, I can flip back a lot easier now. Awesome. I think we discussed about this, the hierarchy of vision is always first, right?
Mm-hmm.
Vestibular second, then we got proprioception, mobility, right? All three of those have to communicate together to have full on human performance, right? You can do all the mobility work you want, correct biomechanics, but if your vestibular and your visual system don't agree with it, which is what we call sensory mismatching, you'll stay stuck in pain, right? I I always have to integrate other systems together, especially vision and vestibular, because they can completely mess up your movement, but they can dramatically improve it too, right? So always look higher in the chain instead of just from the neck down, right? So yeah, that's why I always include this kind of stuff with my work.
But since you're on that topic, would you be able to provide examples of how you implement the vision and the vestibular training with the proprioceptive training?
Sure. So when we talk about proprioception, um, hopefully most people know what proprioception is, but it's our awareness of our bodies, our joints in space, right? So proprioception is a sensation, right? So for example, let's take the wrist, right? The fact that I know how to bend it, extend it, here, I can feel that I am moving my wrist, right? We have receptors inside the joints of our wrist and the skin around it and the muscles, which are called mechanoreceptors, right? These mechanoreceptors provide information to my brain that, hey, I'm moving my wrist, right? So, and the fact that if I look at it and do it, my vision is also telling me, hey, I'm moving my wrist, right? Uh, I know that I'm bending my wrist forward. I know that I'm bending my wrist back, side to side. Let's say I'm not looking at it though, and I have my wrist all the way back here. Proprioception means, okay, I know my wrist is bending. I know it's extending. I know I'm doing side to side. So those mechanoreceptors are telling me what I'm doing with my wrist. So far, so good. So that's proprioception, right? When it comes to now mobility, even the word mobility, I don't like the word mobility because mobility means I'm just moving joints. I like motor control more, which is mobility, but in control of how you move it, right? So this is like the basic stuff for the wrist, right? Motor control is okay, I know how to do this, right? Which is basic, but can I do very complex things with it? For example, if I combine flexion, extension, ulnar and radial deviation, and I put those all together, that gives me a circle, right? Now that's a complex movement. Okay. So I'm increasing the amount of proprioception by doing something more complex. Follow me here so far? Right? So if we go back to the vestibular system, if we're talking about brain now, right? Frontal lobe, parietal lobe, temporal, the back part of the brain called the cerebellum. I don't know if you've ever heard of that word. The cerebellum is responsible for your ABCs: accuracy, balance, coordination. Okay. Now, here's how movement works in the brain. Let's say now I have my microphone here, right? It's on my left side. And I want to use my left hand to grab the microphone, right? Here's how movement works. Remember we said that anything I feel and anything I move on my left side is controlled by the right brain. Are we good on that? Specifically now, the right frontal lobe, right? He's the one that initiates the movement. It's the start of my left hand to grab this, right? But the frontal lobe first has to create the plan, the movement, before I even do this, right? So the right frontal lobe is saying, okay, I see that microphone and I want to grab it. So that frontal lobe is making the plan. Now the frontal lobe has to communicate with the opposite, or actually ipsilateral, left cerebellum. So the right frontal lobe tells my left cerebellum, hey man, I want to grab that microphone. The cerebellum says, now go for it. So the frontal lobe now initiates my hand to grab the microphone, but that's all it does. It just starts it. The cerebellum now is responsible for the accuracy, the balance of my arm, and the coordination to grab that. If I didn't, and my cerebellum sucked, I would overshoot, for example. Are we good on that? Right? This is why when we go out on a Saturday night and we start drinking, the alcohol affects your cerebellum. Right? That's why cops do the whole nose touch test. I do those tests here too because I want to see how well does your cerebellum work. Right? So what they're doing is brain assessments. They just don't know it. So now we got that, right? Right frontal lobe, left cerebellum does that. Cool. Here's another fun part though, is it only takes about 10% brain power for that right frontal lobe to just do that with my left arm. The other 90% of that stimulus of that right frontal lobe now also at the same time starts sending signals to the right side of the brainstem. You follow me so far? The brainstem now, pons, medulla, midbrain. There's an area in the brainstem, specifically where the pons and the medulla meet. In that middle is called the PMRF, ponto-medullary reticular formation. It's a net-like work of neurons, right? That PMRF is responsible for the posture of your entire right side. So if I see somebody's shoulder on the right side that looks lower, for example, is responsible for the global tone of the right side. So if I see a right shoulder that's more forward and down, my flexors are too toned up, but my extensors not so much. So you might see that every time I do coordination work on my left side, why would I do coordination work on my left side? Well, if I do coordination work, remember cerebellum, accuracy, balance, coordination. So if I do figure eights or circles, right? Wouldn't it make sense that I'm pumping up that right frontal lobe and that left cerebellum, pumping up that right PMRF, and then you start seeing the shoulder up, back to where it was again. So number one, that right PMRF is responsible for the tone of that right side. The other thing it's responsible for is that it inhibits pain. So if you got pain anywhere on your right side, you can do coordination work on your left, and you might notice the pain levels on the right side almost go gone or just improve. Starting to get this a little bit, right?
Mhm.
So
How
there's more. Excuse me.
how quickly would you say that people may see some type of improvement in pain with like coordination
Oh,
work done
like that. Oh, wait. Improvement of their pain levels per se?
if they had on the right side?
Immediately. 3 reps, but like I'm talking like accurate. For example, even if it's just a finger, right? Quite frankly, fingers and hands have dramatic power than anywhere else in the body. If you tell anyone to do, let's say, index finger circles, for example, but I'm talking like accurate, not there. Make sure no other finger moves. And I want that finger to be like an accurate circle, especially when they're so focused on how to do a finger circle. Good. I need that amount of attention because that's a lot of frontal lobe stimulus. 3 reps, reassess. It may not, the pain may not be gone, but it'd be like, hey, that's a lot better. Awesome. Right? Maybe I just need to load it now. Maybe I need to do a finger circle with some other stuff. Here's where I wanted to get to now. Vestibular system. Since you asked me about how can I integrate that? Okay. My left vestibular system directly connects to the left cerebellum. So what does that mean now? Any move, I turn my head to my left, for example, horizontally, that's my left inner ear stimulating. Or up and left, because if I go straight up, that's both ears working. But when I go up and left, it's more the left ear working. There's specific like head motions that you can isolate ear to ear. Okay. And another one is down and right, where my left ear goes down. You might get confused a little bit, but let's say I want to stimulate my left vestibular system. I can just do a left horizontal turn with my head, right? If I remember correctly, did I tell you about VOR and VORC by any chance? Last call.
No, not on this one.
There are 2 reflexes. One is called a vestibular ocular reflex, which means I'm looking at a stable target, right? I'm looking at something right now. And if I turn head left, my eyes should stay on that target. It's a reflex for my eyes to be stable on a stable target while my head is turning or whatever, right? And we do that every day in life, right?
Mhm.
So that's called a VOR. Another reflex is called a VORC, vestibular ocular reflex cancellation, which means I now have a moving target. Let's say my thumb, right? My eyes are fixated on it, but my eyes are not going to move. I'm canceling out my eyes for being involved to stimulate my left inner ear. So I have a moving target and my eyes are stable and I'm doing this.
Mm.
You see that? My eyes were stable, right? This is also an assessment as well as a drill. How is it an assessment? If I have people tell them, okay, I want your eyes stable, they should not move. And you see this, hold on. And you see this, you see how the eyes move first, right?
Yeah,
The
yeah.
clown that you have, she probably might suck at this. Who knows, right? So now I can use those moves, horizontal stuff, VORC or VOR, while I'm doing mobility or motor control. Double the stimulus now, that right frontal lobe, giving more pain relief on the right side. So since you mentioned about mobility or proprioception, proprioception is not just basic movements. How about complex? So now, you know what? We can just test this ourselves, even while you're sitting. Check your neck. Let me see how much you can go left, right. Let me know if one side is tighter.
Let's say
To the right.
right feels a little tighter.
Okay. How about turns, right or left? Which one feels tighter? I see a little limited to the right, I think.
Yeah, just
Okay,
not too much, but a little
too
bit. Yeah,
much. Um, are you right-handed or left-handed?
righty.
My guess from these motions, I might need to work on the right side, but let's do something on the left. Uh, have the hand out, and without even you looking at it, I would say go away, not even looking at it through the camera, and give me index finger figure eights, making sure that no other finger is moving. A clean figure eight. Don't even look at it. Exactly. Just feel it. Even if you're not doing it correctly, I just want you to focus that you're trying to do it. Let it
A lot
rest.
harder than it would actually seem.
Yeah. Let it rest. Reassess. Better, worse, or same. Okay.
It actually feels looser,
Looser. Beautiful. Now,
looser than the left side actually now.
okay. Now, let's pump it up. Love to see if you can do this. Same thing. I don't want you to look at it. Give me again a figure eight, right? And look at something, not the camera, maybe pick something to look at that's like hopefully eye level in front of you. As you're doing that figure eight, whenever you're ready, keep your eyes on that target and turn your head to the left. And then return the head back to the middle. So return left. Good. Back to the middle. And again, good. Back to the middle. One more time. I know
Yeah,
it's hard. Shit. Yeah, I know it. Let it rest.
trying to rub your head and pat your stomach.
Exactly. Reassess. Pretty good. Turns.
Yeah, I don't feel like any tension on the right side anymore.
Good. That's how fast you can see a result. So since you asked me how would you use proprioception, okay, that's just a finger, right? Uh, I can do literally anywhere in the body. You should be able to do very complex movements on every joint. Ankle figure eights, pelvic circles, like it looks like a hula hoop, neck circles, right? That's how you own your body, right? People can be masters at moving their spines and everything. What about the vestibular system? Do they like it too? Are they synced with it? So for example, you also spoke to me about vision. Okay. Can I do mobility? And one of the functions that the eyes do is called smooth pursuits, meaning can I watch a moving target and moving only my eyes, right? So can I do neck circles while while moving a neck? That makes sense,
Yeah.
right? But again, it's one second. Sorry. Um, but again, these are very general. Depending on the person's history, there's specific directions I want their eyes to go. Because, for example, when my eyes smooth pursuit to the right, that's right frontal lobe stimulus. Right frontal lobe communicates with the left cerebellum. So I can do my figure eight on my left, and instead of doing vestibular, I can do rightward smooth pursuits. Same thing, right? So depending on the person's history, the assessments that I do, my assessments give me a picture of, do I need to work on right side, left side, right? So it's not just like all this stuff that I'm showing you for, like, general. I have to be very specific. Where do the eyes need to go, right? So that's what makes my stuff very hard, because it's a lot of testing that I have to do. Like, my assessments alone can last up to like 2 hours sometimes, because I need enough data to know how to really fix this person.
Mhm.
Okay. So hopefully that answers your question. I know I answered like in a very big type of way, but yeah.
So I imagine there would be like progressions and regressions to all that because based on case history, and then I
Yeah.
could only imagine that some of that would actually like overload someone. So say for instance, because I've taken some neurology classes where if they start to fatigue in one direction with their eyes, like that could actually elicit more pain. It's similar in a
Yeah.
sense to training muscles where it can be too much too soon, no?
Absolutely. So that's why we have the concept of minimal effective dose, right? I need the most minimum amount of reps, sets, and everything, but the most effective, as long as they get a good response. If they fatigue now, yeah, now that's a fueling problem. Fuel now is two things: glucose, carbs. So I have them like sip, I don't know, like sip a Sprite or Sour Patch Kid or something, get some sugar in you. But most importantly is oxygen. So they have them do air hunger, where they cause, remember we said air hunger causes vasodilation, right? So a sip of Coke or Sprite, air hunger, phew, I'm ready to go again. So it's not just only they get fatigued, but their pain starts to reappear again. Like, hey, it was getting better, 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 and now all of a sudden it's getting worse. Huh? Let's stop. There's no reason for me to keep on giving you drills. Let's fuel up first, right? So it depends on how much their brain can tolerate. But even the concept of loading, right? Okay, this is one drill. How can I load it? Speed is a form of a load. Do it faster, or change directions. Instead of doing an up and down figure eight, do a infinity sign. Or a load is change of body position. Instead of being here, how about look away? That's a load too. Do vestibular drills at the same time. That's a load. Put a band on it. That's a load. So you have a variety of loads. When we hear load, especially with the person in the fitness world, we always think about more weight as bullshit. Even if you're in the weight room and you hear, hey, I want to, how can I load it more? You have to increase the weight. Try doing squats with the weights that you want. I dare you. Keep your head straight, but look to the right. You have any idea how that changes your squat?
Mhm.
Right? It feels different. I have people squatting and I want their heads turned to one direction. Like, why would I want to do that? Just try it. It completely changes the squat. But why do I want that? Well, I have, let's say, a power lifter. The guy can lift off 500 pounds of a deadlift off the floor like it's a feather. But he comes to me saying, hey, man, I blew my back out changing a garbage bag. Right, because all you know is front and back. Change a garbage bag is front and turn. His body doesn't know that. So I might use his lifting in weird ways to help him become more resilient to something that he does outside at home and things like that. Right. That's why I like to keep telling people in the fitness world, please introduce some novelty into your training. Do weird shit. As long as you are aware of it and you're in control of it. Who tells me it's wrong if you squat and have your trunk twisted to one side and squat like that? You know how many bodybuilders that they see me do that and be like, bro, you're going to blow your back out. You sure about that?
Mhm.
I'm getting my body a lot more resilient doing it this way. If you try, you're going to blow your back out because all you know is just there. That's it.
One line.
Right. So that's the problem I have in the fitness world. But you know what? More patience for
Yeah.
me, clients, more of that. So whatever.
Have you ever worked with vipers? You know what those are?
No.
Like
Like,
kind of, it's like this cylinder like tube. It's loaded, it's weighted. One of my mentors actually helped create it, and the concept behind it was you're farm strong. So they had hockey players that were from the country, and compared to hockey players from the city, they were just like resilient as crap. Like they could take hits, they'd bounce right off of it. And his theory behind it was that they're moving in all these different directions. So they're baling hay, they're carrying things in odd positions. So it's literally
oh,
Armstrong. They're moving in all these different variations.
sure. Yeah. If it makes them move differently, yes, absolutely. Right. That it could be that. It could be, I don't know if you saw my story. Like I did sandbag squats, right? 120-pound sandbag on one shoulder. But you see my entire posture is like lopsided to one side just to hold it back, right? Okay. I've gotten 3 comments so far from bodybuilders and be like, bro, you're gonna get a herniated disc. Are you sure about that? Been doing this shit for years. Then I put it on my opposite shoulder. Do it again. Like, or you can do this thing called asymmetric weighting. Load up a bar, man. Put a 45 on one side, but put a 25 on the other. You don't have any idea how weird that's gonna feel, but let your brain figure out to hold that bar steady with different weights on it, right? I'm all for just change something you're training, right? And everybody likes to talk about, shocking the nervous system. Let's do more reps. Let's do supersets. Let's do quad sets, whatever. You don't need to do any of that shit. Change a body position, change an eye position, change a weight from side to side. You're going to shock your nervous system like crazy and promote more hypertrophy because your brain has to work harder to figure something out, which means more muscle recruitment, right? So it doesn't have to be an additional load of weights. It could be a different type of load in a sense, right? So whatever this man did, which I'm very much interested, you can send me a link on that. Sure, absolutely. Anything that makes it different, I'm all for it. Yeah.
You feel like stupid strong the next day afterwards. Like you wouldn't think that you're really doing anything, but then all of a sudden it's like, damn, I feel juicy today. My
Yeah.
shoulders are good.
Sure. Hell yeah. I'm definitely interested. I want to see this. Cool. There we
I
go.
like tried to refocus on the microphone when you brought it in. It's all
Yeah.
good though.
Anyway, what's up?
You touched on the fueling or how fatigue is a fueling issue, and you also mentioned way earlier in the episode about how we need more CO2. So would you mind diving into that just briefly? Like, what do you mean by that?
Yeah. So because of our um, growing way of our Western living, the anxiety that kicks in, we all tend to hyperventilate in a way, and we consume larger amounts of oxygen. That's why when we take a pulse ox, it might be a normal, like normal for me is like 96, 97, somewhere around there. Um, but we tend to get too fatigued too early, right? When we fatigue, that means we depleted the amounts of oxygen in our bodies, and now your brain is like plateaued, it's like tired, right? So, because of this early fatigue, that is because of our constant consumption of more oxygen and more oxygen and more oxygen, right? But if we have more CO2, we're able to maintain our oxygen levels at a lower rate, but last longer, have better endurance, if that makes sense, right? So that's why air hunger is a big thing. That's why Buteyko method is a big thing because you're trying to build up the tolerance of CO2 that also makes the tolerance for the oxygen to stay, instead of going too high, it stays leveled enough for you to withstand longer periods of training or anything that requires larger amounts of oxygen. Does that make sense so far?
Mm.
Right. And we also need more CO2 because again, it keeps the arteries and all of our blood vessels, it keeps them dilated. So better blood flow to our bodies, right? The only times we need that large amount of oxygen is like when something very threatening or very high intensity exercise, or if like a tiger's after you or something, right? But we see this now with people just doing very daily stuff. They're consuming way too much oxygen and the anxiety that comes in and the stress. But then once that 3 o'clock hour starts to kick in, I'm like, I want to go take a nap or something, right? And especially if they're mouth breathers, right? They're barely getting any CO2. It's a lot of freaking oxygen. And so they deplete very easy, right? So we need, yes, we do need oxygen, but not to the point where it's too much in a way, right? And we need glucose, but oxygen matters a lot more than glucose, but we still need both for the brain to keep going in a way, right? So that's like the most layman's terms of an explanation I can give. Yeah.
Isn't there also where it's like you need a certain amount of CO2 present in order to actually get the hemoglobin to release the oxygen too?
Yes.
Isn't that the Bohr effect?
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't want to mention that because many people may not understand that, but it's a good thing you said that.
I got you.
Yeah.
All right, so jumping back to vision, because that's your first priority in regards to the nervous system. We've already discussed some ways that you can kind of train it. You have the smooth pursuits, you have saccades and such. Now, to what extent do you think that people can improve their visual acuity, as you mentioned earlier, where it's like that's the one test that you're getting, the 20/20, it's just one specific test. How clear can you see? Is it possible to actually improve that?
Very much. I mean, I've improved mine. But it takes work, right? It takes like daily practice and it has to be intentional, right? So because we're practicing vision every single day, right? But it's not intentional, right? So like for me, for example, I remember um I only have myopia. I don't have astigmatism, which means I can't really see far enough, but I can see very well close. I remember about 3 years ago, I used to be a negative 2.2 on both eyes, 2.20, negative 2.20, and now I'm a negative 1.75. So my vision is becoming better. Like I can see further. A little, I still can't see clear, like well, but it's improved. But it takes daily practice for me to do that, right? And yes, you can improve visual acuity uh, through many different ways. So what I tend to do is a uh, test first. Okay, if I'm at a specific position right now, I'm in this chair and I have a target and I can say that hey, I can see, let's say, I don't know, I can see letters, whatever, or I can see the ball over here. I can see it very clear, but anything else behind that now gets blurry. Okay, I'm going to use this now as a test. That's a visual acuity test, right? And I said, all right, let me see if I can do all the functions of what the eyes do: smooth pursuits, saccades, convergence, divergence. Um, I do, actually, the first thing I need to do, which I recommend this to everyone, especially who looks in front of computers all day. I do this thing called a eye reset to basically relax them and to get your nervous system to calm down. And even just by that alone, you might actually see a little bit better too. So the first thing I do, this little reset thing is I do about 5 seconds each position of just a little eye massage, but not on the eyes, like the on the orbitals, like the edges of the bones of the eye sockets. here because you have the ocular muscles that are attached to it. So I'm just relaxing the muscles here, 5 seconds. Then I go to the sides. Then I go to the top ones with my thumbs like this. Then I go on the insides where the tear ducts are. So that's number one, like a little eye massage. And then as I do palming, which is also if you type in palming on PubMed or anything, you're gonna see research articles on palming, which means make your hands like cups and you close your eyes and you cover them. So you're not pressing them, you're just covering them, right? And I stay there for like, I don't know, 30 seconds, maybe a minute. And here's the interesting thing about the palming is that when you have your eyes closed and they're covered, if you see like a lot of flashing lights and colors, that's an indication that your sympathetic nervous system is up, right?
Mm.
So if I see all that, and the more I stay there, then it starts to get dark and pitch dark. My sympathetics dropped. Okay. So I stay there long enough to get rid of those colors and I see dark. Okay. Third now is I do 5 to 10 seconds of rapid blinking, very fast blinking. Blinking because, especially with the use of our monitors, we've seen through research that there's 50 to 60% less blinking because of constantly being focused on our monitors, right? Not just only uh, computers, but especially our phones, right? So the eyes get very dry and then the nervous system is stressed. So you blink to lubricate them. And then the fourth, which is my favorite, is I close the eyes and I do eye pressure. So I press the eyeballs lightly back and I stay there for another 30 seconds to a minute. Eye pressure, and we're talking about very light, is actually a reflex. It's called the oculocardiac reflex. Oculo, eyes, cardiac reflex, which is one of the fastest ways to get your heart rate down.
Mm.
And especially for those who like are about to have like a panic attack or have anxiety, I tell them press your eyeballs back and up, they start to calm down. Right? So I use that a lot. So I do this whole like eye reset, and then I can do my visual acuity distance test and I see, hey, I can actually see a little bit further back than that now, right? So maybe people's visual acuity is bad because their eyes are too stressed, right? So I do that before I do my vision work. So I do you said the name. I do my uh what's it called? My I don't go right into smooth pursuits. I do eye isometrics, but it's the 8 compass eye isometrics. To my left, 5 seconds. To my right, 5 seconds. That's isometrics, right? Top, down, up left, up right, down left, down right. 8 directions, eye isometrics. 5 seconds. I can do 10 seconds, right? But because I have like a laundry list of eye exercises, I just do 5 seconds, right? After that, I can do smooth pursuits in the 8 direction, in those 8 directions. Smooth pursuit to my right, smooth pursuit, smooth pursuit to my left, like I don't know, 5 and 5, up and down, up right, down left, up left, down right. I do all my 8 compass directions, right? Then I do eye circles right here. So I do eye circles here. And then what I start doing is I got blurry again. Let me just fix that again. There we go. And when I do my eye circles, you can see me now from the side. I do eye circles here. And then I start bringing it a little closer. See that? So it's kind of like a funnel, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now my eyes are converging, and then I can go further away to divergent, right? So I do eye circles this way. Then I do a spiral, which is here. I start going up, right? So I can do like a spiral up and down, right? Then I do the big H. Doctors use this a lot too. So the big H is here, up, down. Sorry, here, up, down. Just make a big H, right? I wrote these down too, so sometimes I forget. Pencil push-ups, which is converge, diverge, right? Another one is near far. So I bring, let's say, my thumb close before it's about to get blurry, right? And I stay here. Okay, I can see that clear. Now I'm going to look at something far. I see that clear. Back to this. Back out. So near, far, right? But I also do this sometimes here, like near, far, right? Uh, what other things? Convergence, uh, saccades, left, right, left, right, top, down, up, left, down, right, right? So I all my 8 compass directions, right? So you see how many skills the eyes do?
Mm-hmm.
And then once I'm done with all that, I do about 5 minutes or 10 sometimes of peripheral vision walks or peripheral awareness walks. I go out for a walk. I pick a target that's far away, right? I'm looking at that target, but I'm aware, hey, I see the cars on my left side. I see the buildings on my right. I see the sky above, but I can see the floor below me. So I'm opening up my peripheral vision now, which is the one thing that we've all lost ever since we started using these, right? You have any idea how much parasympathetic peripheral vision can be? Like how relaxed you are? Quite frankly, because of our focal vision, that's now how we get the forward head posture and the rounded shoulders, right? The only time I need that kind of posture, let's say if I'm a painter and I need to be very specific, right? But our bodies adapt to that kind of posture because of that focal vision, right? And even PRI confirmed that too. So peripheral
You mentioned
vision, yes.
you mentioned earlier, I believe it was that the like your exhale is tied towards, or if you do a breath hold after an exhale, then that would converge your eyes. No? So it's like we're stuck on this one range of motion. I might have had that backwards.
Well, I think you're probably mentioning air hunger, maybe.
Yeah. It's like
Well,
the
regardless. So if I do air hunger, which is an exhalation based drill, uh, I'll see, I'll actually notice that I can see as both actually closer as well as far, but maybe not so much. Well, that's a lie. You'll see changes on both actually, because one, you are affecting number one, the fuel, so you can see a little clearer. It will make sense that, hey, I can converge more because air hunger stimulates the midbrain. You have the oculomotor nerve in the midbrain, which makes the eyes go up, down, in, but not out so much. Although there are muscles that um, diverge through the oculomotor nerve, but that's why people tend to see maybe a little bit further away, but they can definitely see more up close, right? So usually I tend to give more inhalation based practice because I want to stimulate the pons. The pons has the abducens nerve that abduct the eye. So then your peripheral vision, your far sight starts to improve as well, right? But again, it's nothing in neurology is like clear cut. Like do something and notice if it makes a change, right? Because neurology is like it's not textbook at all. Okay. So yeah, hopefully that answers the question with that. Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot there. You have so many gems, brother. And I noticed on previous videos, it looked like it was recorded while you were in New York in your course. You were wearing glasses at the time, so do you still need to wear glasses or just from time to time?
Occasionally, occasionally, yeah. I mean, but again, these are my new prescription glasses. So yeah, of course I'm gonna need to wear them, but I try to use very little of my glasses. I use mostly contacts because glasses are I like to call them cages of the eyes because I can see clear through the lens, but I still see blurry on the outside. So I still have now focal vision, and not only that, uh, I'm limiting the amount of range of motion that the eyes move. They don't want to go past the frame, and eye position and eye muscles dramatically affect range of motion. So, for example, you can even test this out yourself. You can see me. If I were to turn my head to the left without involving my eyes, here, this is about as far as I can go. I'll do that again. There. I'll do one more time. Now, if I use my eyes to look further left,
Mm,
right? So if you don't use it, you lose it. That's how we get arthritis. Like people say, "Oh, I got arthritis on my neck." Well, all right. When was the last time you ever turned your head that far? It's like I barely do that. Okay, that's why. So that's why with glasses, they cage the eyes to move further. So now your neck starts losing range of motion and then everything else below that too. So I use contacts so I can be able to make sure I have peripheral vision as well as the ability for my eyes to look anywhere in the world. Right. But yeah, there are times that I use my glasses. I'm in a hurry, or sometimes I like them. But as long as I know I don't want to rely on them all the time. That's why I'm not wearing them right now, right? But I mostly wear them when okay, it's night and I have to drive and things like that. If I am not having my contacts on, um, and I still would like to get LASIK, but if I know I can change my vision naturally, right? I'll do that first. I'm not saying that my vision is going to be, perfect with the things that I'm doing, right? But maybe I can get it a lot better and maybe I don't need the LASIK to be honest. But there are people that have like really bad vision. I'm not going to say, "Oh, don't do LASIK." Sure, go right ahead, but try some stuff first, see if it gets any better, right? So I'm not like saying, "Oh, you can be like 100% or something like that." There are people that have, and there are quite enough books out there. One of my favorite ones is See to Play. It's actually from a basketball coach that actually became a neurooptometrist. Yeah, if you take a look at See to Play, he has a ton of like little vision exercises, and there and they you actually start seeing improvements in vision. There are actually apps that you can go on there. One of them is called Glasses Off. I've used that too, but it takes time, right? It takes consistency, like daily, and it's also sometimes it's exhausting because eyes, like I said, is 90% sensory and they're directly connected to your brain. So they burn calories, right? Because it's exhausting, right? So as long as the person is okay with doing the work, awesome. If not, then that's why you're going to opt to go for surgery, right? But how many times have you seen people get LASIK and then 5 years later down the line, back to shit again. It's because they're just not doing intentional vision work, right?
Mhm.
So yeah,
Yeah. It's literally if you don't lose it, or if you don't use it, you lose it. So
yeah. It's
if
use it.
you're
Don't if you don't use it, you lose it, and also use it and improve it, right? Like keep progressing. Don't otherwise you just your brain's gonna just plateau.
So you mentioned earlier before the visceral system and like the gut brain. Could
Yes.
you dive a little bit into that? What is the visceral system? I know you don't deal with too much nutrition.
Yeah, I don't deal much because again, it's a different world when it comes to nutrition. But I do visceral therapy. Now, when I say visceral therapy, there are many different forms, but neurologically, that people do visceral therapy. I want to know, does it make sense? Like there are certain professionals out there like they do deep tissue massage to it and anything. Yeah, it does have its purpose. Brain wise, now is if you look up on Google, and we actually learned this in school. We learned this as a theory, but we never applied it, right? So it's actually called visceral referred pain patterns. So if you type of that on Google, and you're gonna see like especially charts with like a human figure, and you're gonna see like color coded areas on their bodies, and each color and each area that you see, for example, liver, right? There are organs which are called hollow organs, which is the liver. Um, you have the lungs. These organs don't have they don't have nociceptors. They don't have threat receptors themselves, which means if I have a liver issue, the liver won't give me pain at the liver site, like right here, but it'll shoot nociceptor activity to other parts of the body. So when I have a liver problem, elevated enzymes, inflammation, whatever, liver usually reflects pain to the right mid-scapular area. So when people say I got a knot back here and I've done everything under the world to get it out and it's still there, and specifically right-sided neck pain, right? So that client of yours that says I have right-sided neck pain, ask her if he ever had any liver issues. It's worth asking. So, and with organ pain, the another thing that you will notice is that they can never like pinpoint where the pain is. They go like it's just somewhere here, right? So liver, kidney when we have like kidney stones or y- uh, any kind of kidney problems, right? Kidney infection sometimes can actually give you pain across the pelvis where the SI joints are. So you can actually get lower back pain because of a past kidney issue, right? And they've done everything for lower back pain and even surgeries too with no relief. Maybe it's a visceral problem, right? So that's why during my history taking, I asked them, have you ever had UTIs, kidney problems, kidney stones, anything with your liver, lungs, for example, bronchitis, asthma, things like that? Lungs can reflect pain as well as the neck, specifically more on the left side and also left mid scapular, right? So if you look at that visceral referred pain pattern chart, it gives you an idea that, hey, usually people have pain at this area and look where it's attached to. The most common one is the heart, right? When people are about to get a heart attack, what do they feel? Hey, I feel pain going down my whole left arm. All right. When dealing with heart, that's not your thing to fix. Immediately emergency, right? So to give you an example, since I mentioned liver, bodybuilder comes to me for right sided neck pain, right? I ask him a bunch of questions. How did this happen? He's he's like, bro, I've done everything under the sun. Like dry needling, massage, chiropractic, stretching, everything, right? During the history taking, I went to the visceral part and I asked him, okay, I'm like, all right, you're a bodybuilder as well. You ever had any liver problems? He's like, there were times that I had some elevated enzymes. They found some inflammation in there. All right. So then I do my visceral therapy, which is very easy. Um, you know that we have the skin, but we also have the fascia. Fascia is very important because if I put my hand on your liver right here, where the liver area is, just moving the skin and fascia, you're also moving in part the liver. Sometimes organs need mobility too, right? So when there's some type of existing inflammation, whatever, there might be times where that organ can lose its mobility, right? So before I did anything on him, I tell him, all right, let me see how much your neck can bend side to side. You know, he bends it all the way to his right, but he's like, that's about as far as I go. Pain on my right side of the neck shoots up, and I also still got that pain on the part of my back. Like it was the information I was getting from him, I was like, this sounds like liver, right? So I put my hand here and I just check out like skin wise. I move the skin to the right, move it to the left, up, down, and I'm trying to feel if there's like a barrier, meaning like move it up, down, and I'm like, all right, it feels kind of sticky here, right? So I went down into his left. Yeah, I went down and left, which was like sticky, right? It wasn't moving well like the other ones. So I kept it there with my hands and I tell him, retest, let me see the neck again. And he goes, no problem, right? So, and he's like, how did that happen? All right, because you're telling me that he has some liver issues, right? So what do? What's the fix? Okay, I put a piece of kinesio tape, right, as a base. And then I took another little small little pieces of kinesio tape. I put one on top of the base. I pull it down and left, anchor it there with one tape, anchor it there with the other. So he has something constant holding the tissues that way, right? So that's why my thinking of the use of kinesio tape also has changed too. Like I use it now to do directional tissue work with tape, right? So now he has something constant there. All I need him to do now is move his chest, walk, whatever. So now his tissues can move. That can possibly affect the movement of the liver, right? And that's how his therapy was with him, you know. So that again, this is all I learned from the Baral Institute, visceral therapy, and that's how visceral therapy should be if you're doing like manual work, right? But also like sensory also matters too. For example, organs love heat, right? Heat actually calms the organs, which is actually a vagal stimulus. It actually activates the vagus nerve, right? So if I have somebody that's like anxiety, stress, and just like has gut problems as well, I always tell them put something like put a hot pack over it, or even use abdominal braces, right? Because the guts love to kind of be held like this. They feel secure in a way, right? So that's how visceral therapy works, is because we don't have actual nociceptors, threat receptors at the in the actual organs that produce localized pain. They reflect it everywhere else in the body. So if you look at that chart, it gives you a good map. Hey, he's got neck pain, but he also has a history of bronchitis or something like that, or kidney problems or stomach problems, right? And you'll see, do they reflect the information that he's giving me? And they can do what I just showed you, right? You could give that a try. There's more stuff, obviously, but for free, you could try that with your hand, right?
A little
Give it
bit.
a shot, right?
That reminds me of I have a book. It's called Resistance Flexibility by Bob Cooley, and his concepts kind of remind me of FRC work. Like you're not just holding a passive stretch, like you need to be active within it. And what he discusses in his book is that he has a system where if you're restricted in this area, then that is tied. I guess it's the meridian system as well, but it could be tied to your liver, your spleen, your kidney, this issue, that issue. And what he was seeing was that by getting into these stretches, which would sometimes require multiple people to get you into the stretch,
Okay.
now those organs started to heal
Move
as
around.
well.
Yeah,
So, do you think that's possible, similar to how you can kind of train your brain just with your fingers, that
absolutely.
it can be either some type of
Mm,
fascial work, you're working directly there, or working on that
yeah,
specific
but
area where you're getting pain?
yes. Well, yes and no. Yes, in a way where if you're doing those type of movements and those stretches that can, lengthen fascia or move the fascia or whatever, I'm all for it. I would say that maybe it's just not enough, right? So, for example, I would do those stretches, but also have something there, like for example, the tape where the actual restriction is, right? And if I know I pulled it in a specific direction, or in this case, it was a down and left, okay, maybe I need to move my trunk in that direction for it to lengthen, right? Where I have a disagreement is about the whole meridian stuff. We're not made out of fascial lines. We're not made out of lines. Okay, like the spiral line, the frontal line. I get it, but even the father of the fascia, Tom Myers, even he's like, I really hope that people can just chill out of the fascia because it's just not everything, right? Like through dissecting people, yeah, he saw like patterns of the fascia, but the fascia is not such a big important organ as other things are, right? The fascia has like a little role to it, but it's not everything, right? My thing is, yes, take fascia, but be more specific to it, right? Like, okay, you're getting into these positions, but is it for this specific person? Do they need that direction, right? And first, I would see topical restrictions. Maybe they need to be placed in a specific direction for that fascia to be able to feel that pull that also gives them a very good response to their nervous system, right? Which is what I mentioned, allergies are kicking in, is that I can't demonize every method that's out there, right? Deep tissue work and theraguns. We have sensory receptors for all of these, but everybody's individualized, meaning that some people need that kind of deep pressure. Other people need the sensation of stretch, whether that's muscular or fascial. It's still a stretch, right? Other people need sharp stuff like dry needling or electric stim. They're all amazing, but they're also all horrible. It all depends on the person's nervous system, right? I can't demonize any one of them, right? So when they say, "Oh, I go to my chiropractor for 3 years and I feel amazing," why the fuck are you going to a chiropractor for 3 years then? You shouldn't be fixed already. He's like, "Yeah, I feel amazing." Okay, for how long? Like 20 minutes. That's a problem, right? Maybe it's not for you. Okay. Or maybe the stimulus of feeling pressure gives you relief, but it's only for a very short period of time. I need that sensation over and over and over and over and over again until it becomes permanent. Maybe if I can put a voodoo band on it that gives me pressure and I do active movement, you see what you said about passive and active? Very much yes. Anything that you see people doing only passive stuff, it won't have a long-term effect. They got to do something passive, active at the same time, right? So hopefully that answers the question for that.
With the KT tape, with the kinesio tape, how are you applying it? Because when I've had it on me, it's just like it feels very subtle.
I highly use this stuff not just only for the visceral system, but especially on scars. Because scars, you got scar tissue underneath it. A scar, you've really much altered the neurology around the skin. So you kind of killed nerve endings and, excuse me, mechanoreceptors. Let me do the whole video thing. See me clear? There we go. All right. So I do this a lot on scars, right? And the way I do it, really quick. Let's say I got one piece here and another one. I usually like round out the corners so they won't get caught on clothes. So let's say now I have, I'll show this on my thigh, right? So let's say I got a scar right there. And he comes to me saying, yeah, I had surgery on there. And ever since then, my hip is hurting, my neck is hurting. It could be a scar down there and it can still affect the neck, right? It could be anywhere in the body. So what I do now is, all right, I see a scar. I do my 8 compass directions. So I put my finger on it and then I move it up, down, left, right. And I'm looking for a barrier, right? So let's say, down and right, I feel like it's a little sticky. I keep it there, right? Before I even do this, let's say he comes to me for neck pain, but he tells me, hey, 2 years ago I had surgery here. That matters to me, actually. So let's say he comes to me for neck pain, and I see that again, his neck doesn't go more than this. I can't turn all the way, whatever, right? You can have shoulder pain. He's like, my shoulder hurts when I go overhead. Okay. So let's say I pull it down and right. 2 things can happen. Either he gets way better or he gets a lot worse. If he gets way better, I have to tape it in that direction. If he got worse, I do the exact opposite. Is instead of a down right, I go up and left, right? So I need to move away from the barrier, right? So how do I do that? Let's say I pulled it down and right. I got the best result. Okay. First thing you do is put a base. So you take a piece of tape, no tension on it, just flop it on the scar. It has to be at the size of the scar, right? The other one now, I cut that in the middle. I take 1/2 off, put it right on top of the other in the direction of that down and right. Cool? Here's the kicker. I'm not going to pull the tape like this. I put my other hand on top of it and I push it there. Right? And then I give it like a little stretch to anchor it. And that's it. And then I tell the patient, athlete, whatever, just give me a little walk, let some movement happen around that tape, reassess. Yeah, pain's gone. So that's how I do my tape work, right? So the same thing with the liver. So I put like a large base here, but I take 3 other little smaller tapes. So, because I got to pull the whole thing down that way. So I got to pull like 3 or 4 of them to give me like a broad pull that way. That makes sense?
Yeah.
So that's how I do the tape work.
And what it seems like it's doing is it's giving people the opportunity to now work within new space. So ideally, I would imagine you want them moving afterwards, or you want them
Yep. I need them moving.
exercising in that new range.
Absolutely. Yeah. Give them mobility work, give them whatever, right? Specifically, I learned this method from rock tape, actually itself. And they completely changed my thinking on taping. but I still do the traditional stuff like the fanning if they have like swelling somewhere. Like that stuff is still really good, right? But I found more uses of tape and more specific as well, right? So yeah, but that's how I do the majority of my work with tape, with kinesio tape.
Do you believe that it's possible to ever be fully recovered from like a very traumatic injury, or if you've had like a surgical procedure, or will you always kind of be dealing with something, you think?
Something always improves. There's never a thing where it's just like stagnant. That's why I love neurology so much because it gives you a plethora of options, right? That's why I like to call myself my line of work of being an options facilitator. Like if one thing doesn't work, something else will. As long as you have like a very good understanding of how things work multi-system, you got loads of options to keep on improving. Dude, I was paralyzed once, right?
Mhm.
If I was just stuck only on biomechanics and breathing, I would have still been in a wheelchair right now. So yes, there's a lot of freaking things that you can do. Like I sorry for the way I was with a student of mine. He just like came back to me and you don't mind if I just share like a minute of what we spoke about? So
Of
he's a
course.
student of mine from my mentorship program. And he brought his dad Friday night. Man, the guy's like a train wreck, like multiple surgeries on his back with hardware in it, memory problems, pain like all over his back. Um, and he's like, I've went to every single freaking doctor possible, and I can just see the man's doubt for what I was gonna about to do with him. Um, and I'm like, all right, I already know where to start. The fact that he has like surgeries on his back, I have to start mobilizing his spine. And the first thing I checked was his balance. So I usually have it's called a Romberg's test, which is you bring your feet together and standing, and you're looking to see if he has a sway. Even just standing with eyes open, he was swaying. The moment he closed them, like I had to sit behind him so because he was falling. So I'm like, all right, and I asked him like, aside from the pain, what are the other things that you have a really hard time with? He's like, every time I need to get down to the floor to tie my shoes or anything like that, I can get down with this with like holding onto something, but for some reason, with especially with my right leg, I just can't get back up. Right. All right. And I do that balance test. Um, I know a lot what's going on when talking about balance, especially when it comes to like the vestibular system. So I pop on my bone conduction headphones. I don't know if you see these.
Mhm.
You get them off of Amazon for like a buck 50, I think. And I did like some frequency sounds on them. I found a specific sound with him. The guy was stable like a candle after. And I'm like, and he's like, okay, yeah, I feel more balanced. And then he goes, can I just try something? I'm like, sure. What do you want to try? He's like, I want to try this whole lunging down, the thing I do with my leg. And I'm like, I wish I fucking recorded this. And the son was with him, my student. We go into the gym. He has the headphones on, but I shut him off. He's not hearing anything. And you can see the guy cannot get up for nothing, right? I press play. He hears that sound. The guy just goes up magically like that. And these fucking headphones, right? Because I've been studying a lot with these damn things. And he's like, his son came in today because when I finished with him that Friday, he's like, I'm going to bring my son to bring you back these headphones because I let him borrow it. And I'm going to make sure that when my son comes in, he's going to make it rain. The session is usually 220. The guy just literally gave me $600. No. I'm like, because he's been like this for fuck 20 years, right? And he's like, in one fucking session, you were able to get me like that. You're worth every fucking penny. Not to brag about myself, but It's these things when you're just like messing with brain stuff, bro, magic things happen after. Well, the reason why I love these headphones, well, for many other reasons, but the headphones, they stimulate three cranial nerves. One of them is the trigeminal, which is all about the jaw and facial sensation. So people with like TMJ, it helps a lot. But you're also stimulating the vagus nerve because the sensory portion of the vagus nerve is in the ear, but also in the back, right over here. So because the bone conduction headphones vibrate, um, again, the vagus nerve and the trigeminal, they have sensory distributions. So when I rub my jaw over here or anything around my face, that's my trigeminal nerve telling my brain, hey, I feel this, right? The back part of the headphone now, the sensory portion of the vagus nerve is located in the back of the ear, as well as other parts around the ear too. So you're vibrating basically the back part of the ear. So the vagus nerve is becoming stimulated. So you might notice people feel calmer. Is vagus nerve is very parasympathetic drive. So you might notice their heart rate goes down, their blood pressure, their gut function starts to feel like you feel like the gut motility, like the food starts to go around. You actually can hear the stomach like gargle sometimes. So very parasympathetic. The majority of the stimulus, though, is happening because of the sound, and sound is processed mostly through the vestibulocochlear nerve. So vestibular system, cochlear is sound, right? And remember, we talked about the brainstem, pons, medulla, right? So the vestibulocochlear and the trigeminal, they live in the pons. The pons actually gives us parasympathetic properties once it's stimulated, right? So the main reason why I love to use bone conduction headphones is yes, I can give people actual vestibular drills to do, right? But it'll take me like 1,000 reps of doing vestibular work to get like a permanent result. But if I put something like if I put a device that kind of takes care of that already for me, and I keep it on there for like, I don't know, 10 minutes a day, I don't have to do this over and over and over again. I just put the headphones on, and I can put headphones on and I can stack other stuff like mobility work, breathing. So I can have a vestibular stimulus and focus on other things, right?
It's like similar to what you were mentioning with the woman that couldn't smell.
Yeah.
By stimulating a certain part of the brain, you can improve a different area by using kind of an indirect method.
Yes. If I know that temporal lobe has so many other functions, if I can use those other functions that it does, one thing helps another, right? So that's why I saw the improvement of smell because I know where smell lives in the brain. I did memory games with her. Hippocampus lives in the temporal lobe. So memory games stimulated that area, the temporal lobe. And she's like, hey, I can start smelling again. Good, right? So that's why we learn stuff in school, what every lobe of the brain does, right? But we never applied it. That's why it's called applied neurology, right? We just learned this stuff in theory.
Mhm.
So let's use other things that it does to improve another dysfunction, right? Yeah.
You definitely have my brain going, brother, because for the past more than a decade, I've been kind of focused on just strictly like biomechanics, fascia, the body, and I've never even, besides my small little course, I never really tapped into the nervous system or gotten to apply it. So I didn't use it.
Get
I
it.
lost it.
I get it because the nervous system is the most complex. It's very, very hard. is hard because it requires all other systems of the body to have knowledge on, right? So that's why I don't have a social life. I sit down and I study, 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 study. It's like, but you know what? It's fucking worth it to me. And it's also hard because the the medical system, especially here in the States, is created that way. Specialties and everything like that. We have to go to a neurologist or a specialist, and then I have to go to an orthopedist, and then I have to go to an optometrist. It's like I don't need all that stuff, right? Pelvic floor is like the one thing I'm studying right now. I don't have to send my patient to a pelvic floor therapist. I know what to do with pelvic floor stuff, and I know how that connects to the brain. And I've seen some dramatic results doing pelvic floor work, both female and male, right? And I'm like, they would tell me I've been going to my pelvic floor therapist for a year now and got nothing. And I got better results with learning how to lightly contract specific muscles of the pelvic floor. But more importantly, no pelvic floor therapist told me to, like, dude, relax your pelvic floor muscles. They always like clench, clench, kegels all the time. But the more you clench, the more the threat levels go up, and your brain's like, I hate this. Now your neck pain's worse. Now your back pain's worse. Constipation is worse. People that have constipation, all they know is tight. They don't know how to, like, actively relax, because even relaxation is a skill, right? It's not easy, but I like it because it's actually, for me, a form of meditation too, right? And meditation is a lot of frontal lobe stimulus. That's why people say I feel better every time I meditate. I feel like I can move better every time I meditate. Well, no shit. Frontal lobe is the initiation of movement. That's why visualization is big, because I can visualize what I'm doing. Okay, what does the frontal lobe do? It creates the plan. So if I can pre-create through meditation what I'm about to do, because athletes do this all the time, no wonder they move better. You see how you can do some psychological work that can help your movement. You can do movement work that can affect your psychology. You see that? Right?
Hmm.
It's like a chicken and the egg. You can do either or. So that's the fascinating stuff with me, man. It's like using using the functions of your brain, as long as you have an understanding of how it works. This little 3-pound organ, man, is everything for me. Yeah.
You definitely have me thinking. I'm like, how can I move my fingers, or what scent can I put on in order to read or study better at the moment, or just like get my brain working
Yeah.
at max capacity?
Yeah. It'll take a thorough assessment to find that out, what you need, but hey, it's worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So would you say, is there something that's very general, very broad that people could do every day to prevent these systems of vision, vestibular, proprioceptive, visceral? Is there something that people can do that's very simple daily that can prevent them from failing or starting to deteriorate?
Especially the older we get, we try and avoid things that are very hard, right? So learning a new skill, learning a new language, learning a new movement, right? We always go back to our default modes, right? Everything becomes automatic, right? Look at the way you brush your teeth in the morning. It's always with the right hand. You always start on a specific side, then go to the other side. Try brushing your teeth with your left. Notice how different you feel after. Notice the amount of focus it requires for you to be, like, specific, right? Try eating with your left. Do you have any idea what it's like? Dude, I tried this once. Wow. It was like a couple of years ago. I was like eating my salad. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna eat with my left. Yeah. You know how long it took for me to stab, like, a lettuce and just, like, all right?
Hope you weren't on a date.
No, it was not, thank God. But I would just highly advise for people to just try something new that is challenging, but not overboard it, meaning like go balls to the walls with it, right? Learn something new, learn a new skill. Actually, the one thing I recently started 2 days ago is learning how to juggle. Yeah, I don't know how to juggle, but a student of mine actually in my mentorship program was the one that brought it to my attention. He's like, "Hey, Andreas, I have something interesting here. I had a patient with lower back pain, and I'm like, can you let me see if you can like juggle balls?" And she's like, "I don't know how to do this," and she's like trying and trying and trying, and then all of a sudden her back pain a lot better, right? But let's think about it. It's a coordination drill. It's a vision drill, right? It's a movement drill, right? Because this person learned something new, she forgot about the pain, right? Because again, pain lives in here. It's a perception of something. So if I can override that with something new in my life, right, I can override the pain, right? As long as it's not threatening. So how can everybody, maintain their health on every system? Okay, learn a new skill, learn a new movement, a new language, do something different with your not dominant arm. Obviously, when it comes to guts, for example, change something in your diet, right? Uh, even just like massage it or something. It's hard for me to answer that because you can do like a million different things. But as long as it's something new that gets you out of your default mode is the best thing I could tell you as easy as possible. Yeah.
Something new, something novel. A quote that I heard a few years ago was story follows state. So by putting yourself in a new state
Yeah.
and circumstances that you don't know of, it's like you forget about everything that you do know of.
Yeah. Yeah. The same thing with change your environment, right? Change how your house is, like change your furniture, move to a different state. Why do you think that people say, hey, the moment I moved me from New York to Texas, my stress levels went way down, right? Completely different person, right? So extra reception, right? You got to change something as long as, because if you're stuck in your default mode, 8 hours a day, I wake up in the morning, I do this, I go to work, come back home, watch my TV, go to the gym, bed. If it's like that every single day, you're defaulting to that, right? Change something, one little thing, right? That's neuroplasticity, right? Neuroplasticity is not very good or very bad. It just is. For example, I could be really good at feeling pain. Oh, that's what makes it chronic, right? Because you've created neuroplastic changes in your brain that keeps the pain there, right? So I got to find a way to like remap it. So introduce something new to create other brain connections and let go of that painful area, or that painful site in the brain, right? So neuroplasticity is a fancy word of a habit. Whatever you focus on, you make more of, and it becomes automatic, right? And it takes 50 to 60, probably even 70 hours deliberate practice for that to be forever, right? One of the most fascinating books I've ever read, and I highly recommend this, The Brain That Changes Itself. All about neuroplasticity. Tons of research in there for people to understand what the hell I'm saying. It is hard, but a lot simpler than the ways I've learned it. Instead of going so in depth with like all the intricate connections, like for example, you have any idea the amount of brain pathways it takes for you to do that with your eyes? Like certain has to the stimulus has to go to certain parts of the brain, it has to go through loops in other ways. Like I don't go that in depth, but I take like the most easiest and fundamental juiced things that they can apply to stuff, right? They're all seeing results. Their incomes went up. Like they're seeing like a lot. They're just thinking a lot differently, and because of that, they're able to even get a like better customer acquisition, like gain more clients. But it gave them, most importantly, the confidence to know how to help one person rather than be like, I don't know what else to do. Just go to somebody else, right? I want to give these people, even including personal trainers, like you can help people a lot more than you think. You just need a little bit more, open up your skill set with this. So I just that's the mentorship program that I'm doing now. Yeah, that's basically it. Uh,
And if people wanted to schedule a consultation, do that through the website too.
yeah, made through the website. Usually it's about 30 minutes, but sometimes I could do like an hour long. Just because I need time to ask questions and things like that. But yeah, consoles done through the website. Yeah,
Perfect, brother. And well, it looks like over the past few years that your brain has been changing. You're doing
a
new
lot.
stuff, so
I've been using it
yeah,
a lot more now.
excellent.
After this, I'm gonna
Well,
go juggling again.
good luck. Good luck.
Yeah. Man. So,
Awesome, man.
yeah,
Well,
but, I'm thank you for this, and I know we hopefully we wanted to get this within an hour, but it took us a couple days to do this.
nah, I mean, I fully expected it, man, to be honest with you. And if you'd be open to it, I'll give you some time to rest, but I think I'd want to make like more of like a series about this type of stuff too, because it's really
Yeah,
interesting.
sure. Yeah, whenever you want, man. We'll schedule stuff, and I'm happy to help.
Cool.
All right.
Awesome, brother. Well, I hope you enjoy your Sunday. Thank you
Yeah,
again for joining, for sharing your mind, and God
definitely.
bless, brother.
Thank you so much, bro, and thank you for having me, and we'll talk soon.